Welcome back to the Limitless Potential Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Jane Patrick, and today we have yet another exceptional guest coming to join us on the show. Today we are talking conscious relationships during chaotic times with the incredible Katherine Woodward Thomas. So whether you are single and looking for the one, or in a relationship and looking to elevate your connection, or attempting to navigate a more conscious uncoupling. Maybe you're going through a bit of a separation right now and you need some support there. During this crazy pandemic and the global situation, then today's episode is going to be a really powerful one for you. So Katherine Woodward Thomas is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, and the national bestseller, Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and teacher to thousands from all corners of the globe in her virtual and in-person learning communities. Katherine is also a featured teacher of Mindvalley, the online transformational educational giant. Katherine also trains, credentials, and supervises people as certified conscious uncoupling coaches and as certified calling in the one coaches, and supports them to develop thriving private practices as love and relationship coaches. And I would love for you guys to play along at home, all of you who are joining us live. So make sure that you are dropping some comments, asking your questions, and we'll get to you at the end. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the one and only Katherine Woodward Thomas. How are you today, Katherine?
Hi, Vanessa. I'm great. I'm having some technical problems hearing you, but I'm hoping it's not the other way around. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you absolutely perfectly. So
okay, good.
I'd expect we're going to get you doing most of the talking, so hopefully it won't be a problem.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm really happy to be with everyone. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to start with asking you, what are you most grateful for in your life right now?
Oh, I have so much to be grateful for. It's almost, I have to stretch my capacity, truthfully. I mean, it's kind of a paradox because there's also things that are heartbreaking that are happening in our world. People who we love are challenged by getting the virus. Some people are losing their jobs. There's a lot of political unrest in America. There's a lot happening. But at the same time, out of it is emerging greater family connections, more solidarity in our relationships with each other. Culturally, certainly here in America, this uprising of justice and putting, a stand to put people before profit. So you're hearing love being politicalized now. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary time. And then on a personal level, so I'm grateful for the awakening that's happening for us collectively. I know the cost has been great, but when I did a recent workshop with Calling in the One, I had a couple of hundred people there, and I have to tell you, I've been teaching these workshops for close to 20 years right now. I have never heard so much clarity and depth emerge from a new group of people. And I know that has to do with sheltering in place and how sobering it is to be going through this collectively. So it's hard to see it. Sometimes when we're in the crisis, we're in the thick of it. But there's a lot that's waking up that feels like answered prayer. I think that's the thing I'm most grateful for, Vanessa.
So beautifully put. I actually can get a bit emotional about that because I think you're so spot on. There is a lot more connection and depth an awakening going on, and I'm really feeling that. And it kind of leads me, you've kind of touched on this, but I wanted to, during this time getting to chat with you, and kind of through the lens of your expertise, what is your perspective on COVID-19 and, you know, what we should be doing and focusing on to really empower ourselves right now and not just get taken away for the ride?
Well, you know, my dear friend Marianne Williamson and I were in a conversation with a group of friends, and she said, a little tongue-in-cheek, but she says it's like God said, okay, everyone, go to your room and think about what you've done. Right. Now, she said that in good humor, but there's something true about it. It's like we have been living very disconnected from our grandchildren's grandchildren. And I think what's really happening right now is that we're seeing a lot of consequences of our unconscious behavior. I think, you know, we're all in this wonderful evolutionary stage where we're waking up to our individuality and our right to realize our higher potentials. But I think that taken to the extreme side of that can be narcissism and self-absorption. And so there's a course correct going on where it's almost like nature is reminding us that it's not just about our individual lives, but it's about also the legacy that we leave for our children's children. And that's really has to be a part of the limitless potential conversation. It's just not limitless potential for Katherine and all Katherine can become. There's something very noble about and wise, actually, about devoting ourselves wholeheartedly to causes that we might never actually see the fruits of our labor. And it's to get connected, not just to ourselves and our own, realize the potentials of our own relationships in our intimate lives or with our children. All those things are a huge yes. It's what my teaching is about. It's what I'm devoted to. But I think it's also about being deeply connected to those who will come after us. Sometimes when I pray and meditate, and I acknowledge the energies that are surrounding us, I will say thank you to the ancestors who are the benevolent ancestors who are present from both the past and the future. Because on some level I don't know that time actually exists, and there are souls waiting to be born, and we want to love them too, and listen to them, and live true to them and in integrity with them.
Wow. I'm so grateful that I asked that question, because it gives such beautiful and empowering perspective to people to get beyond just themselves and all the craziness and the fears and insecurities and look beyond, like you say, for legacy and depth of connection and that oneness with us all. So, and playing our part on that journey. So I'd love...
Well, and if I can just say, it's not an either or. You know, because if you're serving the greater good, but you're doing it at the expense of yourself, where it's not really, I mean, a noble sacrifice requires us to rise very often, but that's different than kind of a martyr pattern that's rooted in low self-esteem and not honoring yourself. So that's not what I'm saying at all. I think it's a yes and.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because you mentioned, I look at that with a lot of times we can hear about empathic people, you know, being with narcissistic people, right? That's the terms, the language that's put behind it. And it's almost like what you're talking about there. It's like an integration of both aspects of ourselves, you know, the altruistic and the narcissistic. You know, the self-sacrificing kind of balancing out with, you know, the all about me kind of meeting in the middle. Is that kind of what you're sharing with us?
Well, I love that way of that perspective, Vanessa. I think that has a lot of wisdom in it, where it's about, you know, really integrating all these parts of ourselves. And I think what's happening, though, with COVID-19 is that there is an opportunity for a kind of moral awakening. You know, we talk about an awakening spiritually, or we talk about healing psychologically. I don't think we talk about a moral awakening very much. And I do think that this is kind of in the right, I mean, maybe moral isn't the right word because it somehow has religious connotations, or people hear it like good, bad, right, wrong. So maybe it's ethical, an ethical awakening. What's the legacy we want to leave? And so when we're visioning for ourselves and the potential of who we are, we have to realize that from life's perspective, our lives matter. And that there are generations who, in the future, who are watching us and actually are here to help us if we begin to call on those energies to live in alignment and in integrity with what's wanting to happen. I think that those of us who are the believers in life and the believers in love recognize that life is indeed making a way, and that even when it's dark, that we are the keepers of the light, and not just the keepers of the light, we are the creators of the light. That's where we step into being co-creators with light. Sometimes people say to me, well, where was God during the Holocaust? Well, you know, that life force was in the hearts and souls of people who knew what was happening was wrong and risked their lives to save people, and lost their lives to save people. And so we all kind of know deep down inside when we're living in alignment with the ethics of life and with the ethics of nature. And so that is the voice, the life-affirming, creative voice of spirit. And those of us who are here today, I guess this is the message we want to talk about. I didn't know I was going to talk about this. This is what we need to be holding on to in COVID-19. And all the things, climate change and all the things that's happening with climate change. I mean, you're in Australia. I don't need to tell you about the terror that's happening.
Absolutely, so true. And I can really feel into what you're saying, because my granny was actually a survivor of the Holocaust. And she's such I've never met anybody like her, you know, and the tremendous value she places on uplifting, you know, those who are in the minorities and things like that. It's really beautiful. So I guess, you know, that goodness can come out of everything and shape and mold us in such beautiful ways, no matter if in the instant people might ask, where is God in this moment? So beautifully put. And I'm really grateful to have your wisdom being shared on this topic right where I feel people really need it. So thank you for everything that you shared, and good on Marianne Williamson for that, you know, analogy of God sending us to our rooms. I think that's perfectly put. Absolutely. So I would love to start off, as I mentioned to you before we started our conversation today, everybody listening, we're not in one area in particular, but what we do share is a passion to reach our highest potentials in all areas of our lives. And love happens to be a big one of those. So I wanted to ask you about this firstly, but before I get into it, I just want to let everybody know what a tremendous impact your work has had on me personally in the realm of intimate relationship. Because I doubt you remember, but about 4 years ago, about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I actually interviewed you with my then partner. And basically at that time, you really helped us to elevate our connection with one another. And then later on, probably about 8 months ago now, you actually helped me transition out of the wrong relationship for both of us, a different relationship. But at this point, it was a very new realm to consciously uncouple, which is something I always aspired to do since hearing your story and your journey. And I was really, really proud of how we navigated that. And it was such a different experience for the breakdown of relationship for myself personally. And right now, I'm in the midst of your 7-week course, Calling in the One. And honestly, my highlighter is running out because every single page has so many golden nuggets that I'm just like, wow, there's so much power in this. And I, for one, am tremendously grateful for how you set this book out, because I'm in a position in my life right now where I had always been waiting for the one, always just selected along the journey, never actively getting clarity over what I wanted in my future or in a relationship dynamic. And really, for the first time in my life, I've got this period in my life and this time to just focus on becoming the person that I need to be to realize and actualize the potential that I long for and yearn for in the realm of intimate relationship. And I love that right now in Melbourne, we're in lockdown with curfews, we can't leave the house, all sorts of things. And I'm like, you know what, this is perfect for me, because it's giving me this time to really focus. So I wanted to know, because we've got so much to cover and squeeze into such a short amount of time, and I want to get to everybody. But I was wondering, what is the one thing that you would say we need to be looking for when deciding whether or not to commit to a relationship, for everybody who's out there and looking for love?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that the most important criteria, okay, so I have to say two. I mean, one is values, that you have similar values, you have similar frames of reference. 300 years ago, I would not have needed to say that, because you kind of lived in a small community and everybody shared the same worldview. But that's not quite true in our world today. So you have to find out who somebody really is, what their vision is, what their values are, what they most care about, what they organize their lives around. But I think something that is really overlooked a lot, Vanessa, is someone's character. Okay, and we should talk about narcissists. I mean, the thing about someone narcissistic, and I used to myself, I mean, I had a lot of toxic patterns. That's how I gained all the wisdom that went into calling in the morning. I spent a lot of time doing research for that book. And one of my patterns was to go after narcissistic people because I was so drawn to the charisma and the confidence. I didn't have confidence, so I was really fascinated with the confidence. And I kind of got a kick out of people who would just kind of eschew the law, or who cared about that person or what others expected. We were going to do it this way. I thought it was all very exciting until I kind of, crashed into the wall of shattered heartbreak. I wish I could say it was only one time, but I guess I had to learn that lesson a few times. So I really learned that what we're looking for with happy, healthy love, and what we're talking about with secure attachment, is someone who is fundamentally capable of showing up in the tough times. I think the biggest question, and this is Dr. Sue Johnson, who created Emotionally Focused Therapy, came up with this, and I love it. The biggest question is, are you there for me? Are you really there for me? That's the biggest question. Once we get an interdependent relationship, I did use the word dependence. Some of us think that we should never depend on anyone for anything, but nature hasn't really designed us that way. So we have to make sure that we're not codependent, but that we have healthy interdependence. And one of the factors of healthy interdependence is the ability to know that someone is really there for you and you for them. One of the places we have to grow in order for that to happen is we have to get good with self-soothing when the other person sets a limit or a boundary or says no and is pointed in what they will or won't do, and to have that experience without withdrawing our love or punishing them. And that we can count on them, that we get to have boundaries, we get to have limits, we get to say no, because, oh, by the way, boundaries are the keepers' health in a relationship, and the other person will not withdraw their love or punish us. They will stay present and available. They might be disappointed in our answer, but the love is intact between us. So that's the atmosphere in which we can start to create healthy interdependence And a lot of that has to do with good character, really valuing loyalty, integrity, keeping your word, being an honest person, all of those things that actually create a field of safety in which to fully be yourself so that you can really use the relationship as a springboard to reach your higher potentials.
This is so beautiful, Katherine, and resonating with me personally so deeply because if I reflect back on my relationships and, with the wisdom that I have now, not knowing back then, I can see that I personally left each and every one of my relationships for the same reason. And of course, I'm the common denominator, but the reason was I didn't feel as though I could be all of who I was with that person. And so this is a time right now where I'm getting crystal clear clarity, and it comes down to exactly what you're sharing about that container of safety where you can use that as the springboard to reaching your potential in every other area. If you have that safe zone, that team, that somebody who has the character to have your back, to be there, to show up despite the challenges and the fears. And I'm really grateful for what you share and how you bring that to light for people. So, very beautifully said. And the character of somebody, yeah.
And if I can, just to give people a taste of the calling in the one word, not to put you on the spot, but where we're going calling in the one is, and what does that say about you? Because a lot of times when that happens, something like that where I can't be myself fully with someone, I'll put it on the other person.
Yes, exactly.
That person is shut down, or that person is self-absorbed, or that person has too many wounds. Which all of the above might be so, but the most interesting question is, how did I set that dynamic up? Where did I give my power away? Where did I not negotiate properly for my needs? Where was I being inauthentic at the beginning of the relationship? Where was I giving in order to get security or to win someone's love or to audition for the role of partner? So because once you see that clearly, you can then make an amends to yourself. I will never do that again. And I will always take the risk right from the beginning of negotiating the terms of the relationship in a way and really lay it out. Because what happens is that when we have that mechanism of giving as a way of sourcing safety, we actually we overgive. We don't assert what we truly need or what we truly feel. We kind of subjugate ourselves. And at that point, it's fine for us to do that because we're so euphoric about we're, getting in this person's good graces. But then by the time you're in relationship, you kind of train them that you don't have those needs, that you're smaller than you are. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like a betrayal to them that suddenly you start to show up as the vibrant person with the kind of vision and needs that you are. So we have to know going in, like, what does it actually take for someone to partner with me? What does that actually require of someone? And that's why I'm saying, you better choose someone who has the same values as you, because in some ways, all of us do have the ability to sacrifice in a very noble way for that which we are striving to contribute and create in the world. And you really need a partner who shares that with you so that they will sacrifice time with you, they will sacrifice attention away from them, because they're aligned with what you're creating. They care about what you're creating.
So beautifully put. And yes, common denominator here for all those past relationships. And I can so clearly see the pattern that I see with so many of us, particularly women who it's kind of this kind of the damsel in distress, right? The perfect image of relationship and what you think you need to be in that realm. And what happens is you get put on the pedestal, but then there's no room for you to just be all of who you are in terms of, no room to be sad, no room to have a problem. It has to be perfect, perfect, perfect. But of course, I set that up. And so it's been a journey of my own acknowledgement of my own patterns and owning those different parts of myself. And particularly for me, it's been about owning deeper, quote unquote, negative or darker emotions, and where they've kind of come from, and that whole journey. So yes, it's an interesting one, and I, like you, have had to have a few different experiences so far to continuously up level. But I'd love to now take this kind of direction with you in terms of, what about people out there who are in a relationship and they're in this kind of challenging time? Maybe they're forced to be spending a lot more time with one another, and dealing with the uncertainty, people losing jobs, people worried about the illness. And I'd love to hear from you. What is the number one thing that you would suggest for those couples who want to continue to elevate their connection during this time?
Well, I mean, this is really a make it or break it time for many, many couples. And the opportunity, of course, to really break through to the other side to a greater level of intimacy. I think that the tendency sometimes when you've been in a relationship and you've had a lot of distractions, like the relationship has been kind of about routine, and you go to your work, they go to their work, you've got a lot of things happening externally, and then suddenly you're just in the room with the other. It's going to bring up a lot of things for people. And one of the tendencies that we as human beings, other people, for the problems we're experiencing, it's very hard for us to see ourselves as the source of our experience, and either to see how we are interpreting what's happening and then responding in a way that kind of validates our own core consciousness or beliefs about relationships, beliefs about others that were set up when we were very young, like others don't care about me, or others are, their feelings and needs matter more than mine do, or others have ill intent. Like, these are all, we talk about the beliefs like I'm alone or I'm not good enough, but the I'm not good enough component that's relational. And the relational aspect of the I'm not good enough story is that someone else is better than me. Mm-hmm. Or the relational aspect of the I'm alone is that someone is going to leave. Everybody always leaves me. So we want to start to notice, through the lens of our own consciousness, how we're interpreting what's happening in the relationship, and then responding in a way that almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, almost becomes a way of setting someone up to leave us. So, for example, in the I'm alone, someone's going to leave me. Maybe in the anxiety of that, I chronically self-abandon, always people-pleasing, always trying to, not create any kind of rift with the other person. I might avoid conflict like the plague because I think it's the beginning of the end. But on some level, eventually all of our relationships will mirror our own relationship with ourselves. And so that person will start to lose interest and think about leaving because there's no there. I self-abandon so many times, I'm kind of a shell. I don't even know what I feel or need. They're not even in relationship with a full-hearted person anymore. Or one of the things, I worked with this woman once who, inside her anxiety that her husband was going to leave her, which of course started in early childhood, these things are very easy to kind of track back, and where did that start? What was the trauma? Either an acute trauma, someone died, or a relational trauma, or a trauma, a developmental trauma that happened over time. You were a kid who came home to an empty house every day after school because both your parents were distracted, working, or you had a single mother, and so there was a lot of neglect. So it's not hard to see where the I'm Alone story got created. But she felt so anxious that her husband was going to leave her that she never allowed any conflict to happen between them. And they had 2 children, and they built a life, but eventually it was such an empty shell of a connection that he ended up having an affair and leaving her. But when she came to me and we were really unpacking that, what I said to her was, studies show that conflict is what actually makes relationship. That if you can learn how to navigate conflict in a way that is respectful to the other person, where you're genuinely interested in their perspective, and you create a culture where you both don't just kind of go into this attack mode, but you're able to start to listen to each other, that's actually what roots relationship down and makes it real. And so by avoiding conflict, she never allowed the relationship to truly bond on an emotional level. So inside of our beliefs about others, we're setting up dynamics that kind of have it almost compel that story to reoccur again, which is a duplication of the wounds of our past. So all this to say, for couples who are now kind of sheltering in place together and conflicts coming up, it's not a bad thing.
Yes.
But you want to best to stay out of blame or even trying to fix the other person and become very, very interested in the meaning that you're making of whatever is happening. And the commitment that you have to elevate the quality of the connection. If you have those 2 things, then you can say, well, I'm really committed to using this to elevate the quality of the connection. I just want to let you know that I'm making this mean that you don't actually love me. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the story I'm in right now. And inside that story, I just want to put up a wall. But in doing that, you give the other person a chance to now be in an authentic dialogue so that you can use this time to actually, burn some of that away and get even closer than you've ever been. You become co-healing partners, co-empowerment partners.
Oh, Katherine, this is such beautiful information for everybody listening, myself included. And personally, in my own experience, it's been in times of conflict and how we've navigated that and actually grown from that has definitely brought those connections closer together. And I wanted to share something with you that I've personally been reflecting on and hear your perspective on that, because based on my own personal experiences and the people that I work with in the realm of relationship, a lot of times we're collecting more wounds. We're gathering more wounds based on how we operate in those relationship dynamics. And my new vision, part of what that is to create the kind of dynamic that actually heals wounds instead of gathers them. And I think that this whole way of navigating conflict is a process by which we can heal the wounds of the past with how we approach conflict and maintain that. Would you agree with that, or do you have any suggestions on how people can do that?
Well, so here's the thing. We are doing a lot of our relational work by looking back at the past. We're trying to figure out and connect the dots of what we did or did not get in childhood with how it's showing up for us now. And that's one stage of healing. But when we're really in relationship, what we're suffering from very often is what we're going to call missing development. So if you had a narcissistic parent, for example, who didn't mirror you, who didn't really have an interest in knowing your internal world, what you really thought, what you really felt, you probably have an undeveloped capacity to even know what you feel or what you desire, and an undeveloped capacity to make that transparent to another person in a healthy way that would give that person the opportunity to begin to accommodate those feelings and needs. right? Or if you're raised in that home where you were always alone as a kid and you had to be very self-sufficient, then you kind of have an MO of just operating in this very self-sufficient way, and you're a little underdeveloped in how to actually express your needs to someone in a way that would be an invitation for them to step forward. So maybe you're uncomfortable with being vulnerable. You feel much more comfortable in the power position, which is the giver position. So your capacity is a little underdeveloped when it comes to receiving. So I want us all to start to really take this very seriously, that in a perfect world, you would have developed certain things. You would have seen a model of what healthy relationship looks like. Most of us we didn't grow up in that world. So we're missing certain tools in the toolkit that would actually ensure health. So we have to start thinking developmentally. So there's one part of healing is to heal trauma. That's when we go back. We go back to what we didn't get. We grieve what we didn't get. We get acknowledged for it. But that's not the same thing as saying, wow, I actually don't know how to set boundaries, so I better read a book about it. I better take a class. I better work with a coach who's going to teach me some of these core skills of how to have happy, healthy love in order to create that foundation for me to realize our potentials. Here's one way that people have sidestepped this, Vanessa. I won't have any relationships. I'll just stay focused on my career. I'll just stay focused on my mission. But here's the thing about that. You're going to get far initially, but you're going to hit a glass ceiling. Because nature has not designed us to be solitary creatures. And we really need each other to become ourselves fully. Every time I have felt like I'm supposed to go to the next level of my career, I have had to pray the prayer. Then give me the relational field that will support me to realize those potentials. And I've waited and I've insisted because I now know how to express my needs, and I do it with the universe too. Okay, I'll write that next book, but you have to give me a beautiful environment to write the book. You need to give me the space to write the book. You need to give me a partner who's going to uplift me and, be right there as a thinking partner and as an emotional support to really be able to do my very best work. Yeah. It's good that we need each other to fulfill our potentials. Nature has designed it that way. That doesn't mean that if you're not in a relationship that you shouldn't be 110% on the court, be living the best life you can live, because that is anyway how your partner is going to recognize you. A lot of us get into relationships where it's more of the past. We're not looking to call in someone. The name of my book is Calling In Someone who's going to really help you to be the one yourself. I mean, that's kind of the joke at the end of the 49-day program to say, oh, I see, calling in the one who's really calling in myself, which is what you're saying you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that most of us, like you said, we don't have the role models, we don't have the information, we don't have the tools in our tool belt. So again, just grateful that there are amazing human beings such as yourself doing the work in your personal lives and going through the experiences and then sharing that wisdom in such a powerful way. You do it. So thank you for everything that you just shared then. And I know I'm kind of watching the clock, so now I'd love to just do a quick transition into those of us out there who are currently going through challenging breakups or divorces. And I'd love to hear, I know it's a huge topic. I invite everybody to check out your work with Conscious Uncoupling for that. But what would you say would be the number one thing that those who are currently transitioning out of an intimate partnership they could be doing in order to not collect more wounds, but to actually take this as a really empowering process that can be mitigated from all the wounds that could be stacking up during a time like this?
Yeah, it's a great question too. So there's two types of suffering. And one type of suffering, which I think is probably unfortunately the more common type, is a very ineffective suffering. And that is when we are interpreting what I'm going to call the insult of a breakup, because I think a breakup, particularly if we're being left, is an insult to identity, an insult to our core sense of value and esteem. And in many ways, the whole reason we got into the relationship is because that person was going to fix the wound, and now the breakup is kind of ripping the scab off that wound and re-wounding us in that way. But what I'm noticing is in the ineffective suffering is that the reason why it's becoming a re-wounding is because we're interpreting the breakup through the lens of the old off-center story that we crafted when we were young. The I'm alone, I'll always be alone. See, I'll always be alone. We take it as further evidence. Or I am not good enough. Or I'm not safe to ever love. Love is dangerous. It's not safe for me to love. So inside of that particular meaning, we will be in danger, I think, of really contracting away from love for quite a long time. So one of the things that conscious uncoupling does, and it's the third step of a 5-step process, is we really help people to go back to what I call your source fracture wound, the original break in your heart, and the story that you crafted in response to that. You know, my mother was always angry with me, so I have this core belief that I'm bad. I'm a bad person, right? It's very primal, that core belief. And it lives in our bellies. It's not our brains. Beliefs are not in the brain. Beliefs kind of, they defy logic. They're an emotional center in the body. And you can feel where they're sitting. I think you just really sit with, where is that story? What's the meaning I'm making? What am I saying is true about me? What's the meaning I'm making? Where is it in my body? And how old is that part of me? What's the chronological age of the self that first created that story? And then you, as the adult, who's the competent, wise person, developed person that you are, you as the adult can actually begin to sit with yourself and recognize the difference between the traumatized self, which is the self of that story. You had relational trauma. You created a story about yourself. The true self. Is it really true? What's actually true? Well, what's actually true is that I'm a person who's worthy of love. I'm a person who is worthy of being told the truth. I'm a person who's worthy of respect. You know, what's really true is that it's, you know, we all make mistakes, and that I'm still a valuable person even when I make mistakes. And I'm certainly a valuable person even when someone else is devaluing me. So we have to speak wisdom to ourselves to get ourselves back into empowered meaning. Effective suffering is the other kind of suffering, and that suffering is the grief that actually teaches us lessons. And that's also what conscious uncoupling is about. So we begin to learn what works and what doesn't work, and we are living the consequences of what doesn't work. Giving our power away to others doesn't work. Showing up inauthentically, where you're giving as a barter for love as opposed to an expression of love, it doesn't work. Acting out your childhood home where it was okay to rage at people doesn't actually work, right? So you start to review what doesn't work, what did it cost me, what will I need to do differently, how will I need to grow in order to outgrow that, in order to have a better relationship moving forward. So you're using the experience of having your heart broken open to actually deepen your capacity to love in a healthier, happier way moving forward. And conscious uncoupling actually kind of guides you through that process and make sure that at the end of this, instead of being contracted away from love, you're actually expanded out because you trust yourself to never do that again, and you trust yourself to love in a healthier, happier way moving forward.
So beautifully put. And I would say from my own personal experience with that a few months ago, that even if your partner doesn't follow you on that journey fully, you can, by following these sort of processes that Katherine outlines, they put you in this position of just feeling so good about yourself, being in integrity with your highest self, the best possible effort you could put towards how you're co-creating the breakup of that relationship. And just by doing that, it's not just about the outcome, right? That everybody's happy and everybody's like perfect, right? It's actually about how did you show
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, thank you. So there's two things you just said. Thank you. It's not a Pollyanna, no pain breakup, because that's not human. We all feel sad when we lose a relationship with someone we love. That's just human. We just want to make sure it's an effective suffering and not ineffective suffering. And you also kind of dispelled the myth that I think that people got from Gwyneth and Chris, which is that it's two people doing it together in harmony. It doesn't usually work that way. Usually it's one person and another person's out of sync. You know, they're not necessarily together in that. Sometimes people are in sync with each other, and it's beautiful when you can do it that way. But it only takes one person to have a conscious uncoupling, and it's really about being internally complete with that person. If you have children, it's also about making sure that you're set up to co-parent well, or if you're running a business or you have a shared community, it's about minimizing any damage done. But it's also really about being complete and being at peace in your heart.
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing all of your work with everybody on this particular topic as well. Now, we're ticking out of time, so I'm selecting what questions to go with. I had a bunch that I wanted to dive into with you, but a lot of our audience, they are people out there who want to live on purpose in their life. They really want to reach for their potential. They want to make a meaningful contribution with their lives. And given that you're somebody who's totally in an inspired pathway to contributing to the betterment of humanity through your expertise and the work that you do, what advice would you give to those out there who want to make sure that they can get on a path that's authentically inspiring to them? What advice would you give in that realm?
That's just a beautiful question. Where this all began with me is all the way back when I was 19. And a series, I took a few months actually, and every day I was in meditation and contemplation. And every day I offered my life to be used for the greater good. And my prayer was asking life, how can I serve the greater good? Now, I will tell you, back when I was 19 and I did that, my expectation was that suddenly I was going to get flooded with opportunities to go do missionary work or humanitarian work, or I was going to, even just anything that kind of elevated me in the world, and kind of, really lifted me up to a position of leadership. That is not at all what happened. What happened was my boyfriend married someone else. I gained 50 pounds. My best friend dumped me and took all her friends with her, and then my parents stopped talking to me and threw me out of the house. And I developed an anxiety disorder, I had a terrible eating disorder, and I had to crawl back to health and recovery for the next, how many years? A lot of years. A lot of years. I was going to say 12 years, but I think it was more like 15 years. I was crawling my way back to health and well-being. Now, it was really, so I was a spiritual person already. I was already doing, good things in the world. I've always been kind of a giver, and a caregiver. I like counseling people. Anyway, but what happened was I decided in my mid-30s now that I was going to, I'd gotten so much better. I'd recovered from the eating disorder, and I did so well that I was, then I wanted to do a project that was just a love offering to the universe. And I saw that there were a lot of homeless people around, and I was heartbroken about that. This was about 25 years ago. And I was a musician at the time, and I got this wonderful inspiration to go down to Skid Row in Los Angeles and get a group of people together and start hearing their stories and crafting songs around them. And they ended up, that seed of an idea ended up becoming a nonprofit in the LA music community that was called In Harmony with the Homeless, and it was a phenomenal project where we worked with people who are in recovery from homelessness and had them co-write songs about their recovery with major artists, and it was delicious. However, it wasn't until I was sitting in that room, I was not a therapist back then, I had no training as a therapist, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was sitting in a room with 18 men and women who were getting off the streets, and I was meeting with them weekly, and I was just making it up. And their lives were so radically changing from one week to the next. And I realized I had this epiphany that when I was praying back when I was 19, asking life how I could be used in service to the greater good, I thought life abandoned me. I thought God abandoned me when all those bad things happened. But as I was sitting there, I went, oh my God, life is answering my prayers. That was the answer to my prayers, because now I'm a person who knows exactly what to do to heal from the inside out, from the deepest bottom, and knows exactly how to help people. And I even have an almost magical transmission. And then ever since then, my career has just been absolutely magical, 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 opening, opening, opening. But I still, and even today, as a daily practice, I always say to life, please let me be of service to the greater good, and do not let my ego get in the way. Do not let my ego, this is not about me. This is about where life is wanting to go. And I think, so that's what I have to say about this. I'm sure that other people have a lot of other things to say, but that is the source of my success in the world, and influence so many people.
Oh, beautiful.
It's just staying true to that kind of pure motivation to be of service.
Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely. And I want to ask you also, what's next for you in love?
Well, I have a new beloved. I have a beautiful partner in my life, and we've been together for almost, a little over a year and a half, and we're so happy, and we just moved into our beautiful new home. And that's why at the top we did, what are you grateful for? And I just went to, oh my gosh, I have so many blessings. I did think about that. I really am kind of swimming in just a field of love. And so I think what's next for me, and it's funny because that's what when I said, because I've been feeling that I need to write a book about how to actualize our potentials in love, and I just held my ground with the universe. I said, okay, well, you have to bring me my next partner then, because I'm certainly not writing that until I'm in that relationship, because I can only write from what I know and what I've experienced. So life has fulfilled its part, and now I'm setting up our home, and I look forward to really leaning in and going into a new period of study and depth with the work, and seeing how we can collectively really evolve how we're doing relationships. There's a teacher named Polly Eisendrath, who is, I think she has another name, she's got 3 names, and I'm forgetting the 3rd name, but she's a wonderful teacher. She wrote a book called Love Between Equals, and one of the things she's pointing out is that from an evolutionary standpoint, we've never been at a place where one person isn't the lead and the other person is the support person. That we're all really standing for love between equals. I have been talking about this in some sense with calling in them from the beginning. And basically, what I've been saying and what Polly is saying is that we've never actually developed the capacities that we will need to have in order to sustain love between equals. That's requiring development of us. So a lot of my interest lies in looking at the specific capacities, both the intrapersonal development, the internal development, like self-soothing or the recognition of where I'm centered in my own consciousness, the ability to shift centers within myself, and also the interpersonal development, which has to do with negotiating needs or creating agreements, being able to engage difficult conversations or set boundaries, all of that. So that's where I'm wanting to go, because I think that's where we are collectively really wanting to go.
Please go ahead with that. Let me be another message from the universe to say, yes, please, take us on that journey. I will certainly be moving into that book that you create in this realm as well. And so happy to hear that you are in your new relationship, and it's all on the way for you. So beautiful. And so I wanted to, because we've got just a couple of people who've dropped some comments. We don't have any questions, I don't think, so I'll just read some of the comments. But would you like to let everybody know where they can connect with you and check out more of your work? What have you got going on in your life right now and on your mission? We'd love to hear about that.
Thank you. I actually have I rewrote Calling in the One. Mm-hmm. I rewrote it because the first book came out in 2004, and it's a little dated, and that was bothering me. So I thought I'd give it a little, brush up that would take me like a few weeks, and ended up being this massive project because I worked with so many thousands of people since it came out. So I ended up rewriting a third of the book, keeping the program intact, but really up-leveling things. That new book is coming out in the spring of 2021, but I'm doing an in-depth study coaching collective live with people starting on September 8th, which is people get to read the new manuscript and go through the new manuscript, and then we're meeting once a week for a couple of hours, and there's an online community, and people get to share, and my coaches are there, and they get to get coaching. So you can find out about that on KatherineWoodwardThomas.com. And also people who just want to sign up and be in my community, they're not up to the study, but they want to be in the community and stay connected. I have something called the Love Out Loud Daily that I send out actually 3 times a week. We're dropping the daily because it was too much for people, but the messages, Love Out Loud messages. And there are tidbits of wisdom about how to have great relationships. So you can sign up for that too on KatherineWoodwardThomas.com.
Awesome. I've just put your website on the screen for everybody to see. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And just to read a couple of the comments, Jerry said hello to us and that this is awesome. Donna's sending some love. Bill says thank you to us. Linda's sending love. Donna's saying thank you both for sharing. Jerry's saying it's an awesome interview. Thank you. And Tim says, beautiful conversation, grateful for the good energy and amazing insights, grateful. And actually, Tim asks you a question, which is, are you still a musician? Are you still always a musician?
Am I still a musician? Yes, I just came out with a CD last year that went #1 on the jazz charts on iTunes, and it made the Billboard charts too. It's called Lucky in Love, and you can get it on iTunes. And that's actually somewhere on my website too are links to it. It's on Spotify. And thank you for asking that. Lucky in Love.
Lucky in Love. And I actually was just watching one of your Mindvalley talks, and you do actually do a quick little sing in the middle of it. So it's beautiful, and I'll definitely have to check out. And thanks to Tim for asking that question. Awesome. So was there any final thought that you'd like to leave our beautiful audience with today?
It's just that I love you all, and it's just a great honor to be with you. Thank you for the life you're giving out to the world, and just be safe and be patient with life right now. We've got a big course correct happening, and just elevate the energy for those around you.
Totally, totally. Thank you so much for showing up and being here with us, Katherine, and just wanting to acknowledge you for being the beautiful woman that you are. You are such a great role model out there for myself, for many other women and men who want to transition their relationships, elevate their relationships, bring more consciousness to their relationships, and make sure that they are in alignment with a future vision that they're totally inspired by. So thank you again, and I'll look forward to reconnecting at some stage in the future and hopefully doing some of your courses and all that
I
sort of
look
stuff.
forward to it.
Wonderful.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you.
So much.
Lots of love, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.